Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you guys so much for joining. Still working out some technical difficulties, but we're also checking out our connection on Oneness Talk Radio. And let's see here. Let me try to bring Joyce into the conversation. Joyce, are you there? Awesome. Yeah, I can hear you. And we just went live. I had to start right at 1 to test this out, but let me see if this is going right here. All right, yeah, I think we're good to go. So that should make the Oneness Talk Radio people really happy. Okay, good. So we had to go with audio only because we were having some connection problems. I'm not used to, you got a Mac, and that's not my field of expertise. But welcome to the program, Joyce. I'm so excited to have you on because I've been working with you since, was it October we started?
I think so.
Yeah, October, and you do this Biofield Tuning, and I got to tell you, it was really a cool experience. Wait a minute, they're saying they can't hear you. Can you guys hear now? Oops. Let me turn my phone down here. Let me make sure they can hear you okay. I think they can. I just had you mute it right in the very beginning, and there's a little bit of a delay. So anyway, do you want to kind of give like a brief overview of what the what Biofield Tuning is, Joyce?
Sure. What is Biofield Tuning? Biofield Tuning utilizes tuning forks with the idea that when a tuning fork is activated or struck so that you hear it, it introduces coherence to the body and the field around the body. And so a lot of times with life experiences and what we carry through our life, not only what we experience, but what's been experienced in our ancestry lineages, is carried in the biofield. And so it actually distorts sound, or it distorts the energy held. And so when you activate the tuning fork, it introduces the idea of coherence to the body, and the body goes, whoa, wait a minute, what's that? I think I could go for that. Give me some more. And so what happens that's really interesting is that you can use the tuning forks directly on the body, but you also use it in the field that surrounds the body. And it actually is when you're making movement with the tuning fork in that field area, you just come up against walls or where you are absolutely unable to move because the energy is stuck. And often it actually changes the vibration and the sound of the fork. The woman with whom I studied, her name is Eileen McCusick. She has been doing this for a number of years and really has acute hearing ability and can identify, oh, that's anger, oh, that's shock, oh, that's surprise, oh, that's sadness. And she can really hear those. For me, I don't hear it. I can hear differences, but I can't identify them. But I actually feel the response in my body. And so all of a sudden I'll feel sadness, or I'll get an intuitive hit about what was the experience that created this distortion in the field. So
I love that too. So we did it remotely. You did it. You were, of course, in Albuquerque, and I'm here in Tulsa. And I would lay down, and you would have your table there, and you would, I guess imagine that I'm there and perform the your practice there remotely, and it was really cool because you would pick up on things intuitively and bring it up with my age. And one
Oh,
instant
right.
that one instant that came up that I want to bring out that was really cool because it was a synchronicity is that you had come across this sort of anger and sadness. I think it was around when I was like 2 or 3 years old, and I'm like,
Mm.
I'm not really sure what that is. And you explain that. Well, it wasn't necessarily you, but the people around you. And then I was reminded of an instant where my cousin had been murdered, and it was a shock to the family, and there was a lot of anger and sadness that
Yeah.
got into my field, and I completely forgot about that. So the funny thing is, well, it's not funny, but the synchronistic thing is, my wife asked me like the next day or a day or two later, she goes, "Did you have a cousin that was killed in Times Beach
Wow.
or I think it was Silver Dollar City?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did." And that just came up in this biofield tuning thing. And I'm like, "How did you hear about that?" And she said, "Well, somebody on Facebook was saying we don't go to Silver Dollar City because we had a family member that was murdered there. So it brings up bad memories." And I'm like, "How weird is that came up in my biofield tuning session
Yeah.
just within the last couple of days?" And then, here it is on Facebook and she's asking me about it. It gave me chills. So it just
Yeah.
was a confirmation to me that that's what it was for me anyway. That's if you
Yeah.
pay
That
attention
was
to
a
those
big
things.
one.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was a big one, and it was
And well,
at
and
the time too, for the family.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, of course. Well, and I learned recently somebody was talking about children.
Hmm.
Children have, in terms of like beta and theta and all those different waves,
Hmm.
they have a real slow wave from birth through probably 5, 6, 7, probably 6 or 7 years old. And
Hmm.
so it's sort of like when we think about we're in meditation and how we can absorb information or how we see the world differently and we just take everything in. We're like a sponge. A
Hmm.
child is like that the whole time. So can you imagine, you're a little kid, you can't really form cognitive thoughts through words, but you're in this ocean of emotional reaction and you just inhale all of it.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
it's it's big, and that's what we find. Unless somebody's had like an accident or something really monumentally big, so much of the work that gets done in the biofield is actually related to childhood, and it actually can be around the conception and the what was going on at conception time,
Hmm.
sort of the relationship between the parents and the circumstances, as well as then birth. And it's unbelievable how much happens, how much gets cleared, how much gets laid down foundationally in our lives in those first 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, we really are like a sponge with knowledge and with energies that's all around us. And I did want to let you know that nothing's really off limits. I think our sessions we've had together are great examples of how this can work and help people work through not only what has come up in their own life, which I've had things come up with injuries at work and just trauma in my life, as well as things that I'd sort of forgotten about, like early school aged years and around my conception, like you're talking about. Yeah, the school age one, that's come up quite a bit.
That was a reoccurring theme, huh?
Yeah, it really was. And we'll get into that because I think that's huge, and a lot of people might not. And the way we dealt with that, I think, is really important and interesting to hear. But even around my conception, and the fact that the doctor at the time said that it was like a 90% chance I'd be deformed, and tried to talk my mom into getting an abortion. And so there was a lot of emotion, a lot of energy surrounding whether to keep me, or not. And then of course, being raised in an interracial family, they had that wonder is this doctor just prejudiced and trying to get rid of this baby? Is he just, so there was so much emotion involved at that time that I was really unaware of, but here I am in my mother's womb. So of course I'm going to be picking up all these energies.
You're totally aware of it. Yeah. I mean, you can't discern it. You don't have the faculty to discern it consciously, but yeah, it's what. Pretty amazing.
Oh, okay. You just cut out a little bit, but it's definitely in the field, and it just kind of lingers there until you take care of it, right?
Yeah. Well, it does. I mean, and it influences everything. I mean, that's for me, a practitioner utilizing the tuning forks. It's for me to get into the biofield tuning. It was, a lifelong path of trying a lot of different things. I enjoyed your interview yesterday with Debbie about EFT, because I learned about EFT and utilized that a long time ago. And then I got really sick about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I knew it was emotionally based. And a friend of mine had seen something called family constellation work. And so that's kind of an active psychodrama kind of thing, but it gets to the root of issues that you bring up and is facilitated. And I was amazed because years ago I'd worked with counselors who would do talk therapy in different modalities, and it was fascinating to me, and I learned so much. But when I got to this family constellation stuff, it things that you would never get to, you'd never find out about through talk therapy, simply because it's hitting subconscious and unconscious knowledge that you can't bring out in a casual or in a conversation, even if it's pointed. Mm-hmm. Were figured out. It was, you have one thing that you wanted to work on, and it would take an hour to 2 hours for it to have people participate in it and work out a solution. And it was mind-blowing to me. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I found biofield tuning, and it was like, whoa, biofield tuning gets to things that are not necessarily, you don't even have to know what the story was to clear the energy. And once you clear the energy, you have a really different reaction to your life and life experiences. So
that was really neat, the way you would, the tuning fork would just almost like hit a wall, and then you would, start kind of picking up on what you were feeling and where you were feeling it. And then I would be feeling it too. And then it would force me to focus my attention on that area of life and what was going on, at least within my lifetime. Of course, we dealt with some ancestral stuff, which was really cool, and we'll go into that. But it would have me focus like the school age one that we, time and time again. It was like, and I really appreciate the way you had me deal with that, because you would have me go back to that little 6-year-old boy, myself, first starting school, feeling like I'd been duped into going to school, because, my mom pumped up school, like, it's going to be great, you're going to love it. I was the youngest of all the kids, and of course I wanted to be like my older siblings and everything, so my expectations for school were way higher than what I experienced when I got there. I got there and felt like I'd been duped. I'm like, what is this? This was a trick, this isn't great. This is awful, and I'm like, around.
I want to be with my mom.
Yeah,
I don't want to be here.
I was the baby,
my teacher's mean.
Yeah. So I went back and comforted that version of myself, because who can understand you better than yourself, and understanding what you went through at that time than yourself. And then as I would comfort myself and explain to myself, hey, this is, the older version of you, and things are going to work out, and just telling myself what I needed to hear at that time, then the fork would begin to move through it. Like you were, I was dissolving that energy that had been kept up all of these years from that experience, and that was just so amazing to me. I was even brought to tears a few times. You didn't
tell me that. I didn't know that. Cool.
I'm a dude. You know how it is. It's like I'm a dude. I try to hide it a little bit, but
Yeah, well, I'm a woman and I try to hide it too. I get it.
but yeah, I did have some thick emotional releases that I'm like, what? Where did that come from? You know what I mean? But it was
Yeah.
nice to work through it and feel that relief. That's why I've recommended it to other friends of mine. I'm like, you got to do it because you never know what kind of energy you've got just hanging around, and it might make you sad and depressed at times, and you won't even know where it's just out of the blue, but it's really the stuff that's been hanging on to you like baggage all these years.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the other thing that's really interesting that I failed to talk about is that, of course, I'm okay. We talked about this privately, but I mean, like I learned that I was in Myers-Briggs. I'm an INFP, and so I'm intuitive, and I'm an introvert, and I make decisions by my feelings, and I never have enough information to really make a decision. I have a hard time making decisions. And when, so years and years ago, somebody said, you should learn about muscle testing. And it was like, what's that? It sounded like magic. And so I learned about how, kinesiology, how do you make decisions? And so this system utilizes a pendulum as a form of, as a method of kinesiology. So when I have your body on my table, your etheric body, I use a pendulum and I check the different chakras. But I also, and the minor chakras of the ankles and the knees, and then the root, the second chakra, all up to the crown. And what's very interesting is that the body will give you information so that it shows whether the energy is moving or not. And so like you might get a really slow, tiny circle that's showing that there's a bit of movement in that chakra, but it could be much more robust. Or it could just actually be a straight line. And a couple of times it's been absolutely no movement at all. Well, that's just representing that there's stuck energy related to that. And then there's messages that are given in terms of those chakras. So you could have, here it is. For instance, if your knees are straight lining, maybe there's something going on in your life where you're having a challenge of moving forward, or you're feeling confused, or there's obstacles, or this goes with the right side is more masculine and the left side is feminine. And the feminine is, like the feelings of it, and you have attachment issues. Should I remain or, where in the situation I'm in, or should I leave? And that kind of confusion. Well, that confuses and congests the energy. So when you utilize the tuning fork and you're able to move the energy, it shifts your ability to learn how to deal with that, or to come to terms with what's going on. So there's a lot of information that comes out in a session just based on which chakra you're working on and which side you're working on. Is it a feeling-based thing, or is it an actual situation that you're finding yourself in that's more masculine?
Yeah. So, because I think a few instances, probably more than any other, it was blockages in my throat chakra that really went back to times, not only in my own life, but even in my ancestry, where myself or my ancestors couldn't really speak their truth. Maybe they were in a time when they couldn't voice their opinion. They just had to sort of shut up and take it or do what they're supposed to do and not speak their truth.
I remember that we used the word resignation. They were just resigned to the fact that they had to behave in a certain manner to survive.
Exactly.
It wasn't safe. So they do get paired. I remember working, I think, with you, and we were working on the heart chakra, and all of a sudden it jumped up to the throat chakra, and then it came back down, yeah. Or started at the third chakra, and that has to do with how you feel about yourself, and if you feel like you have to. You feel hopeless or helpless, or you feel empowered. And, so if you think about, the other thing that I've realized through this and just thinking about my own life and my own experiences, that pretty much everybody on the planet has had some form of traumatic event in one way or shape or form, and their reaction to it. But then when you multiply that with the ancestry pushing back how many generations, it really has a big impact on us. And so, if everything's vibration and the vibration has gotten stuck, isn't it wonderful to be able to introduce that idea of coherence and bring that into alignment and then move it forward? The other thing is that at the end of the session, as you know, after when you clear the field, you then drop the energy that's been collected by the fork back into the body so that the body gets to be re-energized and reutilized and redirect where it wants to use that energy. So it's kind of like a bonus.
Yeah. And the thing is, I saw sort of, you can see how, I think we went back like 3 generations even, and it was sort of this repeating theme, and you can see how it gets carried over generation after generation, and no one ever deals with it. So it was nice to let the buck stop at me, as they say. It's not going to get carried on through, generation after me. So that's great.
Yeah. Isn't that what, it's kind of that 7th generation forward and backwards, and it's I remember, making a statement when I was a lot younger going, whatever happened in my family, and I was thinking it much more just about my immediate birth family, but I don't want this stuff to be carried on to my kids or their kids. I want to stop it with me. And that was actually a big mouthful to say, bigger than I realized. But and then in this learning the biofield tuning, it's like, oh wow, this can go way back, and this, we're not taught to realize that when we think or feel something, that we just naturally assume it's ours and we're responsible for it. But what about, if you ask the question, is this mine? It might not be yours. Maybe it belonged to your great-great-grandmother on your mother's side somewhere,
Yeah, definitely.
And so it kind of frees us to realize that we don't have to take everything so personally, and it can do something to really shift the energy, like you said, so that it doesn't have to go forward, and it stops here and gets dissipated, which I think is really healing. And then if we all can do that and clear and clean what we're carrying, whether we're aware of it or not, that's really making a big contribution to, I think, the planet at the moment.
Yeah, and moving forward into your descendants even,
Right.
And I think a big eye-opener for me was that sometimes you'll pick up on these energies and you don't know, just out of pure ignorance, just not knowing, you don't realize it's not yours. So you start attributing things in your life. You're like, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's this, but it's not even yours to begin with. But a lot of us don't even realize, just we don't have that knowledge of knowing that, hey, that might not even be your energy you're carrying around. And here you are carrying it like luggage for decades. It's been carried in your family line,
Yeah, exactly. I've got a suitcase.
Yeah.
It's big. No, it's I moved to a backpack on certain issues. It's nice.
Yeah, it really is.
Not so heavy. Yeah.
And that's been my life journey, really, is sort of unpacking this backpack of just beliefs and things that aren't
It
mine, and
is.
having to
It
get rid of
is.
all that. So this is a whole nother aspect to that same exact concept of getting rid of things that don't serve you.
Right. Right. It's simplifying. And I think that concomitant with that is that most recently, I feel, and certainly it's the energies that are changing and, what's available to us now, that we're having this discussion now, and it's going over the wavelengths and reaching lots of people, is something that wouldn't have happened, 10, 20 years ago, really. But, and so what we can talk about and what we're realizing, and with the incoming energies, things are really shifting. And it's so exciting, but it's like, if we can get rid of what we've been carrying around in the suitcase, then think of how much more available we are to life. And I think that it also takes us from our head, where I've been locked in so long trying to figure it all out. And, I've had so many theories. It's this or that, or it's my fault, or it's this or that, and their fault, or it's this and that, and oh my God, I don't get it, to clearing it out enough where I feel like I'm being able to be in my heart a whole lot more. And that sure feels better.
Yeah, it really does. So this, I think, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is because there's so many tools and modalities out there, but I think this one is really unique in the way that it works. Because, like, I love BQH and some of the other methods that are out there, but this really is a different approach that I think really, like with BQH, you might go to a previous life, but you're not really going to your ancestors unless you were your own ancestor or something along those lines.
Right, right.
This is like taking this linear approach to move backwards in time, because we are in linear time right now, and things move in linear time, and that energy gets brought forward in linear time. So I think that's what makes this a unique tool that might work for people where maybe BQH didn't work, or some other tools weren't very helpful.
I think that there's not one. What is it? Many paths, one truth. It's and we're all unique in our manifestation of who we are on the planet. So, it works differently for everybody. But I really like this one, and because it's not caught up in a whole lot of theory. It's the practical thing of vibration and introducing vibration to the body so that the body can release the junk that it's been holding on to.
Right. I love that.
Yeah, it's very simple, and that's, I guess, what I enjoy about it so much. It was funny when I didn't know about it, and I pull tarot cards periodically, and this was actually an animal from the Animal Speaks deck, but I pulled the whale and I looked at it, and it was like the whale was find your own song, and I intuitively, that INT or INT, whatever I am, INFP.
Yeah.
Yeah, but all of a sudden it was like, I have to do tuning forks. And I had no idea. And so then I searched different people and different schools and different thoughts, and, and chose my teacher and chose this methodology. And I'm really, really thrilled, because I like its simplicity, but I also am grateful that I learned the family constellation, because everybody who practices biofield tuning has different backgrounds, and so they're able to incorporate the simplicity of using tuning forks with what they've learned and experienced throughout their lives. But I like it combined with the ancestry stuff, because I think that that's big.
And probably overlooked quite a bit, I would think.
Well, we don't know about it just enough to, just like what we were saying, is this mine? Well, we have no idea. And my family, I barely knew anything about my parents' lives, let alone anything about my grandparents' lives or anybody else in the lineages. So I have no idea.
Yet it was hanging around like an old buddy, going around with you everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about the tuning forks, because you use different ones, weighted and unweighted, and let's talk a little bit about how that works, because that's pretty neat. And there's like the love frequency and different things like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's tons and tons of tuning forks. There's actually Eileen, the woman who started Biofield Tuning, started it one day, I think in the 90s. She got a catalog in the mail, and she got tuning forks. There was a set of tuning forks, and she went, "Whoa! I'm going to buy them and try them." And but they were poured. They were from India, and what happened is that when she worked with them and played with them and figured out how to utilize them, they actually broke, because there was enough discrepancy in the quality of because of the pouring method, that the vibration just eventually just broke them. And so she found out about ones that are handmade. It's Medivibe is the company. I mean, they're not uncommon, but the quality of them is really high, and they don't fracture like that. But there's two types. There's one that has these little kind of balls on the top of them. They're called weighted forks. And then just a plain tuning fork that you might know about from piano tuning, or however you might have been introduced to them before, music lessons or something. And the weighted forks you can actually utilize on the body. And when you touch the body, it will maintain its vibration for the entire strike of the tuning fork. You can't do that with a non-weighted fork. It just is used for the field.
Right. So there was a few times when the energy would be so thick you'd have to go with, I guess, a lower vibration one to sort of break it up, and then come back with a thinner one.
No.
It kind of was it? Is
well,
that the way
you go with a weighted fork, and I also use crystals. So I use a Lemurian crystal primarily, but you can use other ones. People who understand about crystals more than I have a wide variety of crystals that they use for what comes up. But you activate the weighted fork, and you place it on the crystal above the area in the field that you're working on, and it just changes the vibration from kind of like auditory and into pinpointing it much more clearly through the crystal, so that it works to break up the energy. And sometimes, you can get something that is really thick and really stuck, and you can be in a place working on clearing it for, it seems like hours. It might be 10 minutes, but it just takes a while, and it takes that focus to be able to break that energy up.
That's nice. And I don't know if you were listening. I was actually talking about it Saturday with Eileen, because the meditation that she did reminded me of in our sessions when you would, ground me through my feet, and I would ground to the earth, and then the cosmic energy in through the head into the toroidal field. And I was like, wow, that's just like our sessions with me and Joyce or whatever. So I was explaining that whole thing. And a lot of times we're just not grounded, and just that simple act of grounding in the beginning would work wonders,
Yeah. I think one time I said to you, you need to, make the statement maybe more than once a day that you want to be grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes a big difference on how we're able to handle situations in our lives.
Yeah, I think we don't realize how connected we are and how connected we need to be. So I sit around my computer all the time and picking up all this EMF, and it's good to get away, walking barefoot in the backyard and ground. But of course, when it's cold out, you don't do that, so you don't
want to do that. Right. Nope, that's true. That's true. Well, but you can. I mean, if you consciously make the statement, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And then you feel it. I mean, that's happening to me now after having done this for some time.
And I could feel it too.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's amazing while just focusing in how much your intention can actually ground you and connect you. Just like Eileen did on the weekend. We didn't have to walk barefoot out, but we were actually grounded.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that brings in, so there's two more parts about this that I want to talk about, and that I think at the moment that I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. One is that it's you can use this also for physical things. So, like, there's a protocol for realigning the adrenals. And Eileen found that the right adrenal has to do more with social situations that we find ourselves in that are really tension producing. And the left one has to do more with the fight or flight response. And depending on, somebody's circumstances, one might be more pronounced and out of alignment than the other, or they both equally might be stressed. But this can, she says, as Eileen talks about it, it resets them. It brings them back down to the original, the way the body was formed and created to act. But the stress of all these different situations just heightens it, so that we've got a lot of people with adrenal issues. But she had a guy that came to her that was having real heart issues, and she worked on him a number of sessions, and then he went back to the doctor, and what had been appearing as a problem with his heart, when they did the tests again, it seemed to be not there anymore.
Wow.
So it can address physical things. So, and because so many of the physical things have the emotional content to it, it's addressing the held emotions and held stresses of the experiences. So it really can do a lot to clean and cleanse the memory of what was sort of the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back and got us so out of balance that a physical issue formed.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that happens. Like, we'll have lots of unforgiveness and stuff, and all of that affects us in a huge way.
Oh,
and in fact,
totally.
Some people say, cancers and other things like that can be caused from all this held up energy,
Well, and really it's a gift. I mean, the body keeps trying to tell us information, and, I was pretty dense when I got so sick. I had a situation where I felt like I couldn't be heard and I couldn't express myself, and I was pretty despondent about it. And then a situation arose where there was a conversation, and I felt like I met such resistance. I just felt absolutely like I didn't know what to do, and felt so disappointed. And then my thyroid ballooned, and I had a goiter that was just huge, and it was working on in part, and that was when I started doing the family constellation work to try to look at what are the roots, what are the emotional causes that I can deal with and cleanse, so that pressure doesn't have to be on my poor thyroid anymore. And it took a couple of years, and I did a lot of different approaches, but, it all harmonized and came back into alignment, and my thyroid functions fine now. So, but it really brought to mind how critical our emotional reactions are. And, the talk about wanting to be joy-filled and stuff is important, and it's not necessarily easy to get to, because we're holding all these thoughts and feelings that just, I kept talking about them like they were a looped tape, because I was used to cassette tape recorders, and it would just go over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And this is a way of stopping that looping. It gets rid of it so that you can't loop that one anymore. So.
Yeah, that's powerful too. I noticed definitely a lightening in just my field of energy after sessions, and of course I would take a bath with Epsom salt, and and just drink lots of water, things like this. So it wouldn't end. It wouldn't end when the session ended. It would actually carry over into. I don't know if it's incorporating those energies that were sort of funneled back in the end, or how all of that works.
It's part. I mean, because you do have to go through a process of integration, huh? And
Yeah,
then the mind's going, whoa, whoa. I didn't know I hated school that much, or I forgot, or I forgot that situation arose and I was so dumbfounded or disappointed or whatever. I mean, we're full of those kinds of things, and we don't have the perspective to see how greatly they play in our day-to-days. So when I did this and had a few sessions, what was fascinating to me was I wouldn't really think about it so much, but a situation would occur and, I would deal with it, and then it would be, a later that day or maybe even the next day, and I'd go, whoa, my reaction to the situation was totally different. That must have really, doing the tuning field work really had an effect, because before receiving that session, I would have gone ballistic, or I would have felt bad, or I would have been messy inside. And it was like I handled it in an entirely different manner. And it just amazed me.
Yeah, I think this might be true for a lot of other people. I think sometimes we can get to this point. I know this was true for me, where I got to this point where I felt like, everyone, there's so much worse things that could be going on with me. I'm not really going to complain. I don't have anything to worry about with this stuff. And then, you can sort of have that optimistic approach to where you don't deal with things. So they're just sort of left there to linger, because you know how much worse it could be. You can be so optimistic, is what I'm saying, that you don't deal with things that you can deal with and feel even better,
Yeah.
Like Cynthia Sue Larson said, how good can it get? And sometimes we don't know.
Yeah, I love laying in my bed in the morning where I'm just sort of in this like cloud-like warmth. And I lay there and sort of think about what I use it for, like if something's bothered me or I'm trying to clear out stuff, I think about forgiveness, or I would do Ho'oponopono. But since your interview with her, I've been going, yeah, how good can this get? And it just is such a good feeling. And it allows me to actually start imagining things that before I couldn't get a handle on for doing it. And just that quick, small question is very powerful.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Yeah. I like all the people that you're bringing in. I mean, what a way of weaving a beautiful tapestry that all of us who listen to your channel get to partake of and weave them into our own personal stories. It's wonderful.
It's an exciting time. And so I was really thinking of how, I always recommend people go check out the I Am Discourse because it was so helpful to me. But really, when I think about Cynthia Sue Larson's How Good Can It Get, that's really sort of like a stripped down, simple version of the whole I Am thing, because you're taking control of your experience and more of an optimistic approach. And that How Good Can It Get, is really, it sums up that whole concept that you get in the I Am Discourse.
Isn't it true? Yeah. Yeah. I like simplicity, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I can remember it,
Yeah. Plus, a lot of people, that was written so long ago, a lot of people have difficulty with it uses words like opulence and things that we don't really even use anymore, or terrific or terrible, sometimes can mean the opposite of what we think, or awful, think awful, or, all filled or whatever. So it can be kind of confusing, especially if it's not your first language. So I think the How Good Can It Get is a great way to sum up. Just you're walking around with that sort of mentality, and it's an optimistic one. It's an attitude of gratitude,
Well, and I really kind of like to tune into the quality of people's voices, because I think that it can tell a lot about if somebody has a lot of tension or not, or, you know, about how they're doing in life. And when I've watched Cynthia Sue's YouTubes since she was on the Power of Eight, it's like, wow, she's got a really cohesive quality to her voice that's very inviting and very pleasing. And, you know, I think she's worked out a lot of tensions in her life.
Yeah.
So,
and she's brave.
Happy.
She's been at it for a while. You know what I mean? I think, wow, it must have been a lonely road for a while there, because, you know, it even sounds crazy nowadays, you know, the things she says, but I know what she's saying is true, and I know it's not crazy as crazy as it may sound, but she started in the 90s, and I feel sorry for her. I'm like, oh my gosh, you must have been so alone back then.
Yeah. Was her story about, you know, the dishwasher not working at the Thanksgiving and her sister saying, you know, can you do that thing? You know, and I thought that was hilarious.
That reminds me of Diane. It's like everybody treats the one in Austin that helped throw the event down there. She says they all look at her like she's crazy until something's wrong, and then they're you know, she's the first one to call to say a prayer or do a healing on them.
Yeah. It's pretty funny. Well, I used to do stuff on I have 3 kids, and my younger son, I would do stuff. I learned a technique years ago, and he was getting an allergic reaction, and I did the technique, and it stopped, you know, mid flare up, and he was trying to tell his friends, and he was like probably 12 maybe. And he said, no, my mom did something and it just stopped mid. And they're going, yeah, dude, right. Yeah. You know, so on the QT, you know, he'll let me do, you know, a biofield tuning session on him, but he's not out broadcasting it because it's kind of wacky, but, you know, it works. It makes him feel better. So it's funny. The other thing that I wanted to say, which reminded me, was that from the Power of Eight and the intentions and thinking about intentions, that's another element that I like to do in the work that I do, is that you can just come and the pendulum can guide the session. But what I've moved into is I like the person that's laying on the table that's getting the session to actually have a thought about an intention that they would like to utilize for the session. And I think that makes the potential of the session more powerful. And it also is a way of addressing something at hand clearly by choosing words carefully for the intention. And so I've started doing that probably in the last 6 to 9 months. I had gotten Lynn McTaggart's book a few months before I found your channel and before you started doing the Power of 8 at 8. And I'd been doing that work with some friends. And I'm just really excited about using the intention process for clarifying and then honing in. And then I think that it makes, you know, intentions are good. I mean, they're like personal goals, but when you do it with somebody else and you're making the statement with somebody, they're like the witness to it, and it just empowers the intention all that you know, so much more, that it's an exciting way of focusing the sessions for me now.
Yeah, I totally agree, because like Lynn McTaggart talks, when you're specific and it's like your focused intention will focus more energy in that direction. So more times than not, if I wasn't really sure, wasn't dealing with anything, my sort of default one would be to just have a better connection to my higher self, because, you know, we don't always know. So if we can just have that greater intuition with our higher self to know, or Holy Spirit or God or whatever people feel comfortable with, but just that connection to the divine that helps guide us, and you know, it's what I feel like synchronicities come from, and all of these neat little quote unquote coincidences that happen in life that are just mind blowing. I think just to have a better connection in that way, to just know the direction you should go. Because a lot of
Well,
times you don't even know the question to ask,
it takes the focus, and sometimes if we're not used to doing that, it makes it difficult. But when you did that as a focus for I think it was the last session that we worked with together, it was amazing what came up. It was a lot of ancestral stuff that all of a sudden made a big difference, I think, in your ability to be able to connect, because you didn't even know that those feelings were there, or that they were influencing you. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way you would feel it in your heart. I'm like, I feel it in my heart, and you'd feel it in your throat, and I'm feeling it in my throat. That's wild. It's like a lump in my throat and a blockage, and then we'd work through it, and then it might move back to the heart, or it might move somewhere else, or it might just go away. But yeah, there was definitely a connection going on, and I found the same thing with the BQH too. Is like, there's these connections that happen when this work is being done, and there's so many different tools, but I do like the fact that this is a unique approach from what I've seen.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I have a temperament that would like to learn and try everything, because I learn by doing, and I'm a researcher, so I just come up with all sorts of things. But actually, I'm really happy how this biofield tuning, I don't know that I'll do it for the rest of my life, but it'll certainly be something in my
toolbox or repertoire.
Repertoire. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, that I can pull out and use. But it is it hits. I think that like even doing the BQH and then following it up with a session of doing the tuning forks could be a real interesting experiment, because the BQH brings up awareness, but then you can go in the fields and clear out anything that you've become aware of, and that might even be more effective on certain levels.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because it's so unique that it's touching a whole different area. Yeah.
Well, it's standalone, but I think that it can work really well with other modalities, and then it strengthens whatever you combine. So yeah, I'm real excited about it, and I think that it's. I like to suggest to people that they do at least a minimum of 3 sessions in relative close succession, just so that they can see that it has a positive effect, or it has an effect on them. I think sometimes people will try a one-off, and then it will actually have an effect, but it gets diluted, and then they never go back and go, oh, I did that biofield tuning. And I think that when I got rid of those pent-up energies, it shifted how I reacted. We just don't kind of make those connections necessarily, but if you do it several times and it's kind of cumulative, then you kind of go, whoa, that really has made a subtle but big change. And I like subtlety.
Yeah, and I think we were doing them a week apart. I think that was pretty good, because you take a few days to integrate, and then more things come to the surface, and then you have another session, and it's you can even change your focus and intention at that point as well, and work on something else. But yeah, it really is amazing how the forks don't lie, do they?
They don't, and an interesting thing that happened, it's only happened once for me so far, but when I was doing family constellation, one of the things that became apparent, which really surprised me, but often in utero there's more than one child or one baby growing, and then something happens and one kind of dissipates and fades away. So there can be an actual memory for the person who was born and lived, that something they missed something, but they don't know what. And then in the course of doing a family constellation, they'd find that they had a twin, or one lady had a triplet, was one of triplets, and she was the only surviving. And so one day I was working on a woman, and I got this super, super dissonant sound. I was working on her, I don't even remember I don't remember now what chakras we were working on, but I was around her birth, conception, birth time in the timeline, and it just was off, dissonant, really weird. And all of a sudden it was like, she had a twin that didn't make it, and she was missing that. And when I brought it to her attention as a possibility, she started crying, like from recognition that was true. So it just, I mean, the forks don't lie. It's just about how we interpret the information, and more often than not, I just feel it in my body, and I'm able to talk about the sensation, and then work through it. But yeah, it's cool. It's cool beans. I'm really, really grateful.
It really is a cool modality. Okay, so we are also syndicated right now on Oneness Talk Radio, and we've got about a minute and 15 seconds before we go off the air on Oneness Talk Radio. We can continue to talk here on YouTube, on Unbiased and on the Fence, but I wanted to just have you, do you have contact information you would like to give out?
Yeah, I do. I don't have a website, but if people want to talk to me, or write to me, I've got a dedicated email. It's tuningthebiofield @gmail.com.
tuningthebiofield@gmail.com.
That's me.
That's perfect. And, of course, is your last name pronounced Iwasaki?
Iwasaki.
Iwasaki. Okay, Joyce Iwasaki. And one more time on the email, in case people needed to grab a pen or something.
Sure. tuningthebiofield @gmail.com.
All right. That's perfect. Okay, 10 seconds, and we're going to go off the air on Oneness Talk Radio, but we can continue to talk for a few minutes here. But I did want to say you can go to onenesstalkradio.com. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. All right, we're off the air there. Okay, so we can continue.
Wow.
Yeah, that went really well. So that was our practice for the Friday Night Love stream. So.
I'm glad I could be part of that. I'm kind of giggling in a sweet way to myself about that the Google whatever it was didn't quite work, so we don't get to see each other, because I was feeling kind of nervous about this. I haven't had these kind of interviews much in the past, and it's been a long time. So it was like, ooh, I'm getting nervous. But this feels so good. It's just like a nice conversation with my friend.
Yeah, it's just like when we normally talk. It's cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good synchronicity for me, boy.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, it's like the universe manifested. You manifested what you needed to feel most comfortable to do the best delivery. So.
Well, and I did that. I actually, did a meditation, and I said, I did I'm listening to the ESETI meditation that James does on his line, on his website.
Gilliland. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And I do it once or twice a day now. And so when he was bringing in, the divine feminine, I was going, oh, yeah, I need you today. Make this work so it's really simple and that I'm not so nervous. And then this is how it worked out. And so I'm so grateful.
And it worked perfect, because we didn't need to be on camera, really. I mean, it was
mainly
just
I took a shower, but
And it's cool, because we were being syndicated on the radio anyway, so, we didn't really have it. And I've got this little thumbnail I made, so I can just show that. And so, yeah, it's really cool that...
That's precious.
That we had our time together here.
Yeah.
So if people want to get a hold of you, they can just email you at that email address and just set something up, huh?
Yeah. We'll start the dialogue and go from there. And I'll entertain questions or queries, or we can set up appointment times. Yeah, it would be great.
That's awesome. Is the price? How do you normally work on the price? Is that?
I have I go to people's sites that do a lot of things, and I'm kind of in shock of how much gets charged. I want to make it affordable to people, so generally I charge like $75 a session. But if there's complications for people, or they feel they need it or something, you know, I'm amenable to negotiate, so that I would rather see people try it and see if it can provide relief than feel like, God, I can't afford it, so I'm not going to try it or do it, you know.
Right. Because ultimately, you know, it's like this for most people. I think we would do it for free, but we do have bills to pay, right?
Well,
So,
and I do too, but I mean, I'm not totally dependent on this as my modality of getting finance, and I really sort of made an agreement. I think what really, you know, when I was so sick with the thyroid stuff years ago, I think what I was attributing my healing to the chiropractor I was seeing, and I certainly wouldn't want to not say that he was not instrumental in my getting well. But I also remember one day I was reading a book that was kind of talking about the who's who and what's what of the bad things that are underlying so much of what goes on in this reality. And reading the book was making me feel sick, and it was like I put the book down and I just said, I don't want to know the who's who of all this stuff, but I will tell you, I dedicate my life to serving the light. And then I started getting better, and you know, years later I talked to somebody about my physical health at that point, and he looked at me and he goes, well, you were really on your way of checking out. And I said, what do you mean checking out? What do you know, like, he said, well, you know, like, I just got the message that you had probably like 3 more days to live. And it was sort of like making that rededication and purpose in my life, I think, really focused. And I'm still here. And that focus, you know, I still want to serve the light or the vibration and do whatever I can to be uplifting. And I think that has a much bigger effect than we'll ever know. And I certainly have spent a lot of time in my mind trying to figure things out and feeling really bad, and that didn't help me. So, you know, I would be honored to work with anybody who felt the interest, and, you know, go from there and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say for anybody, because I know people who haven't had luck with BQH and some of the other things, that try it out, see what happens, because it's a completely different approach. And I felt like it was a very cool modality with, you know, lasting results for me.
Wow, that's so sweet of you to say. And I think it has that potential for everyone. People just have to be able to, you know, receive it and see the change, and then, you know, go for it. But if somebody's willing to be in touch, then they really are facing something that they would like to change. And this is I think everything has the potential to be of assistance, but this is what I've learned, and this is what I've synthesized, and this is what I like. So it makes me really happy to offer that.
So you do other things too. Is this where your primary focus is right now in the Biofield Tuning arena, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think that it's just been this real interesting progression, and when I see things that fascinate me over the years, I've gone to them to try to alleviate whatever the stress is within me. But yeah, I guess maybe it was just picking the card and you know, find your own song, and it was like, damn, what does that mean, you know?
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it was just this inner knowing that just went, tuning forks, look up tuning forks. It's like, whoa, really? And
I love that.
And yeah, it caught me really off guard, but it's sort of like, yeah, I like it. And what you were saying before about the tuning forks, I have a small collection of them. I mean, there's hundreds of them. You can have them made to whatever you want. But a couple of them are within the solfeggio range, which was attributed to what was it? The monks used to sing it used to be the scale for music hundreds of years ago. And when the people in the used to sing the hymns or the songs that were in the solfeggio tuning, people would have spiritual openings and experiences. And somewhere in the 16 or 1700s in Europe, they standardized the tuning for all instruments, and they changed it so it's a totally different hertz. So it
shift from 432 to 440. The way it sort of gets it out of what's more harmonious for our natural state of being and all of that. That's strange that they would do that, isn't it?
Well, they don't want, that's too much, that takes away power if people are having spontaneous visions, So, it's
that's
like
really
that.
Amazing, though.
So I use a couple of those. And when I first learned this, I just sort of did it standard about, which tuning fork to use. Now, when I have the person be at their etheric body or in real time, when they're on the table, I just ask the question, which fork should I start with? And sometimes it's the lower frequencies and sometimes it's the higher frequencies. But lately, a lot, I start with the 528, which is the solfeggio scale for love, like you had referred to. And it's like, whoa, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, definitely. So if anyone's in the Albuquerque area, they could also email you and have a session in person as well. I mean, you do have a table and everything, right? So. Yeah.
I moved down here and I thought I was going to get in this in a bigger way and had rented an office with some other people, and then that all fell apart. So I work out of my home. So, but I can, haul my table, or somebody can come to my home and I can do a session.
That's awesome.
You've got people that are in Albuquerque. I'd love to be in touch with them, just because I would love to have expand my list of contacts and people and with similar interests is very exciting to me.
Yeah, and I think you're the only one in Albuquerque doing that practice right now too, aren't you?
There are. The school has grown, and they've taught lots of people, but the last I knew about, I was the only one in the New Mexico area that had gone through the program.
Oh, very nice.
So, yeah. But Eileen is, she wrote a book that really explains it. Her name is Eileen McCusick. And I don't remember the name of the book. I think it's like Tuning the Biofield. Oh, no, that's my email. That wasn't her book. I don't know. But if you look up her name, Eileen McCusick, or she calls it, if you look up Biofield Tuning, then you'll be taken to her website, and it explains it. And, but her book is very cogent and talks about her journey of how she discovered all of this and all of its uses or applications.
Yeah, I was trying to find her book. I did find her website, though. It's eileenmccusick.com. I will paste this into the chat for you guys if you want to check it out and look further into that. I don't see the book title either. You would think she'd have it on the homepage advertising.
Yeah, I moved my furniture around the other day, and I moved the copy. I'll go look and see. I've got it right over here. Now that it's not me face-to-face with you, I can move along.
Oh, I think this is a Tuning Human Biofield, maybe?
Yeah, that would be
Tuning the Human Biofield.
Right.
Healing with Vibrational Sound Therapy.
Yep, that's her. And she's cool. And she's a strong, busy. She's dedicated so much of her life and traveling to introduce this methodology.
And that was another synchronicity I felt to mention. One of my viewers had sent me a link to her video just when we were connecting up in the very beginning. I was like, wow,
Oh,
what
no
a great
kidding.
synchronicity. Yeah.
Yeah. That was when I found her. I thought I wanted to study with somebody else. And then a little voice inside of me said, check her out on YouTube. And I went, well, what a concept. And so I checked her out on YouTube, and it was like, oh, the quality of her voice. This is my teacher. So.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Krista. She posted the name there, Tuning the Human Biofield. And that link I posted in there. So you guys can follow that. Let me put it below as well. So anybody watching later, you can look down in the description and click the link there as well. And one more time with your email address for those listening.
It's called tuningthebiofield at Gmail.
I didn't want to put it in the description because you might get spammed.
I appreciate that.
tuningthebiofield at gmail.com.
Right.
That's perfect. And if you guys forget or something, shoot me an email and I can get you to her as well. Well, Joyce, I really appreciate our time here together. And
back at you, man. This was wonderful.
I'm glad it went well for you. You seem really relaxed and everything. I don't know. I'm always nervous.
It is. It's like doing a session, It's like, whoa, this is great.
Yeah, it really is. Well, always a pleasure talking to you.
Lots
of love to you guys in the chat. And thank you for coming on, Joyce.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you, Shane.
All right. Bye-bye now.
See you. Bye.
If you'd like to support the work I do, go to paypal.me/UOTF. Thanks.